Welcome into the Flight Plan Podcast, third podcast of the week as we cover Jets free agency. Tim McMaster here along with Zack Rosenblatt. He covers the Jets for The Athletic. We're not just covering new signees today, but also some goodbyes. The Jets saying goodbye officially to Aaron Rodgers and CJ Mosley. They also signed three players that fit into what they've been doing all week long. Before we get into it all, Zack, how much sleep have you been getting? Because, there was a lot of pressure coming into the
I
week.
know.
Like, Zach can't fall asleep early and miss a big story like he did a year ago. So, like, are you getting up hourly through the night just to check your phone? Or
Oh my God.
what's been the plan? Because so far you've been on top of everything.
Well, I've been going to bed at relatively normal hours. Not to give too much of a peel behind the curtain, but we do go to bed fairly early in this household. Me and my fiance. She influenced me on that. But so what I've been doing, we get into bed, we watch a show. We do that every night anyway. And then I've just been scrolling on my phone for like 30 minutes to an hour just to make sure nothing happens before I officially go to sleep. I don't put my phone on Do Not Disturb for like a decent amount of time just to make sure, like, once it gets to a certain hour, like, nobody's going to blame me if I miss something at midnight ultimately. But I've been trying to stay on top of it. So far, the Jets have not been making any of the late night moves. I think Andre Cisco was the latest one, and that came at like 8 p.m. the other night. I have woken up in the middle of the night a couple times and kind of like panicking, like looked at my phone just to make sure I didn't miss anything, and I haven't so far. But yeah, it's I learned my lesson last year. I'm trying to take all the right precautions to keep myself from missing anything crazy. The Jets, as we'll talk about, have been pretty low key for the most part. There hasn't been any other than Justin Fields. Like, none of these moves have been like huge or headline inducing or back page inducing. But yeah, free agency this week it's always so fascinating because you kind of like sit around staring at your computer or your phone for like hours, and before you know it, it's just like later in the day. Because the Jets have been a little inactive, I've been able to go to the gym during the day. I'm trying to get into shape for my wedding. So I've been able to go to the gym, which I appreciate, but all of a sudden I'll just look up and it's like 5 p.m. and I've kind of like not done much. And yesterday, actually, Samantha got a little taste of what free agency looks like because she works from home. And so she kind of saw me. There's parts of the day where I'm working. There's parts of the day where I'm kind of sitting around watching the NFL Network, waiting, go to the gym, come back, make lunch, walk the dog. Like, I have time to do some stuff. And then there'll be stretches where, we're sitting down to get ready to make dinner or whatever. And then the Jets sign Josh Myers and Chukwuma Okorafor. And then all of a sudden I'm very distracted and she has to make the dinner. And so it's kind of the life of a reporter during free agency where you could be doing nothing for hours other than like texting people and trying to find out if stuff's happening. Or you could be like as busy as ever for like a small stretch because 9 things happen at once. CJ Mosley also got cut at the same time, which we'll get into. But yeah, so that's a little peel behind the curtain for free agency. We have been doing these pods every day too, which does help occupy some time. It's been fun doing these every day. We haven't done 3 days in a row, maybe ever, I would say. You and I, at least. I don't know if you did that with
Yeah,
Connor back in the day, but and I got a free agency
maybe
beard.
again with the draft.
I keep getting told I need to shave my beard. It's getting long because of free agency beard. You're sitting around all day, and I don't feel like shaving because it takes effort. But
Have you decided if you're doing like trimmed beard for wedding or clean cut for
oh,
wedding? Is that in
I
negotiations?
haven't been clean cut in literal years at this point. So,
Yeah.
and Samantha does want to see what that looks like, but she has said not for the wedding. It will be a trim though. Like, it won't be long, and I got to shave my head too. When you're bald like me, you got to time it out right because my hair grows too fast. But I don't like it when I have like too much hair on my head because it emphasizes. Anyway, we're getting too deep into my
Yeah, because
psychology.
Brian Sternbeck says in the chat, don't shave yet, wait till Aaron
Oh God,
Rodgers picks a
I
new
might wait
team.
a while for
Uh
that. It seems, yeah.
yeah. Speaking of the chat, and you have a story out today where you cover the new signings, but you also mentioned that the Jets have historically been the team that wins the offseason, right? Wins the offseason, big splashes, and then it ends up blowing up in their face during the season. And this offseason, they are losing the offseason. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a blessing. We'll see. So I'd love to hear in the chat what fans think about this approach, because I think Jets fans are used to, you get to now and it's like, all right, this is when we shine, right? Like this is when we go out and spend big money and get shiny objects, and that's not the way. So what do you think, Jets fans out there, if you're listening to us on YouTube, watching us on YouTube, chime in the chat, just like, do you prefer this approach? And then like hopeful that these maybe higher upside, low risk players pan out. We'll see. Let's get to the news.
Yeah. Well, I would say in terms of the offseason champ stuff, I get the sense fans prefer it because free agency is when they are at their best. They're getting players. Everybody is, hope springs eternal, as they say. Mike Williams is going to be the best receiver they have, or whatever. He's going to be a great receiver. Tyron Smith is going to be Tyron Smith. You convince yourself of these things, and it's fun. You get something to get hyped up about, but that has never led to anything for the Jets. So maybe flipping it is not the worst thing. Like you need to pick the right players. They still have a lot of holes. Like I think I should emphasize, like I it's more like I understand their approach and I don't blame them for it more than like I'm celebrating it. Like they still have a lot of holes to fill. We have a lot of questions. We don't know what Brandon Stevens is going to look like, Andre Sisco, what Justin Fields. Like they're making a lot of moves that they need to get right. But it's pretty clear to me they're emphasizing the draft to fill out the depth chart. They still can make moves of free agency, but I think they are valuing the comp pick formula unless they go and make some big splash signings in the next couple of days. And they're prioritizing young guys who they feel like they can unlock some potential, and then you have them on a good deal. So I think it's all a prudent approach, but they need to evaluate and pick the right guys ultimately.
So far, much more chatter about your beard than free agency in the chat. Most people saying that you definitely should have. She should have gotten a look at the no beard look before agreeing to marry you. But all right, let's get into it. Before we get to the signings, the Jets formally releasing Aaron Rodgers, CJ Mosley. Obviously, we knew Rodgers was coming, and it's a post June. Maybe that's worth explaining because I asked you about it actually. Zach. It's just like they did it now, and we've heard all along like they'll wait till June 1st because there's more savings for them. They basically are waiting till June 1st, but they're allowing Rodgers to find a home now.
Yeah, I mean he's technically been able to talk to teams since they announced they were going to cut him too. So this has been in the works. I saw some people saying, why don't they just trade him? That was just not going to happen. Nobody was going to actually trade for him. I know the Giants might be desperate and would be.
Nobody would trade for Cooper Kupp. That actually surprised me a little bit.
I mean, that's kind of how it goes. That's how it goes now. When other teams know it's not even like a secret you're going to cut somebody unless for the cap savings, like you're not going to get anything for them. Like that's just how. Like Christian Kirk, the Texans were able to swoop him because he was somebody that I think was going to have a lot of interest in free agency, and they decided to trade a 7th round pick for him before the Jaguars could actually cut him. But Rodgers was never getting traded. So ultimately, the post June 1, I hear both sides of it. There are a lot of people saying they should just do it, just take all the cap hit this year. I don't think you need to do that. I don't think it ultimately matters both ways, but they would have lost a chunk of cap space if they did this offseason. Now you're spreading it out, and the cap's going to go up next year, and they have more cap space projected for next year anyway. So I don't really blame them for it. But Rodgers, there's been a funny photo floating around of him walking along the beach with the blanket draped around him. The most Rodgers photo ever. Like, don't leave your house right now, man. What are you doing? Or if you're going to leave your house, don't do that. It's just like, so now everybody's getting their jokes off. Like he could not have timed that worse. Maybe he did it on purpose. I don't know. But the Daily Mail got a photo of him, and he's never going to live it down now. So Rodgers, it seems like it'll be the Steelers, maybe the Giants. I think the Vikings, if they decided they wanted him, would get him because I believe he wants to go there out of those options. But, it has just been funny to me. And I tweeted this, I think, yesterday, watching Giants reporters and Giants fans and Steelers reporters and Steelers fans get all angry about Aaron Rodgers taking his time to make a decision. We had to do this twice in 2023. We first had to do it as we were waiting to find out if he wanted to be with the Jets, which wasn't immediate. Like it was in the stretch from the combine, and when he actually went on McAfee and said, I want to be a Jet. There was a stretch there where everybody was waiting to hear from him, and people were getting annoyed. And then we had to wait, I think, 2 months for the trade to go through. So I find it funny that Giants fans are going through it. Like I've seen Giants fan tweets that are like, first they were talking themselves into Aaron Rodgers being the best option for them. And then I'm like, no, I get what Jets fans are always so mad about. Maybe this is why it didn't work with the Jets. He can't make a decision. Just make a decision. anyway, so I found that funny. But yeah, he's post June 1. They'll get $9.5 million in cap space in June. You carry his cap hit on the roster until then, but he's free to like go and agree to deals with other teams.
And then CJ Mosley is the other one. It was just time, obviously. Now, do you think CJ Mosley continues to play football?
Yeah, that's the question. I think that he was still deciding that as of when the season ended. He had a lot of injuries, and he is getting older. I think if he has something left in the tank, he'll have, or if he wants to keep playing, I think he'll have teams that will bring him in as like a leadership depth piece. At this point, he's probably not a full-time starting linebacker. I would have been open to bringing him back if I was the Jets, but I don't blame them for moving on. You got some cap space in June as well. I think the thing with Mosley, like it's just fascinating the way his career with the Jets wound up going, because if you think back to the beginning, he he was injured that first year, only played in a couple games. He sat out the next year due to COVID, which didn't really get him a lot of fans necessarily around here. Then over the next 3 years after that, 21, 22, 23, he was an absolute, not only stud, but just absolute vital part of the resurgence of that defense. The captain, the one kind of making sure everybody was in the right position. He was an all-pro in 22. And like, he was just crucial. And I think he became a fan favorite for a large portion of this fan base. And he really wanted to win with the Jets. Like, that over and over again, the messaging was like he wanted to be part of the Jets turning it around. And so I think that it's cool that he wound up having the career he did. And I think last year you kind of saw they really missed him once Saleh was fired and Ulbrich was the head coach. They really missed CJ Mosley's help on the field. And you saw it in the way they were pretty undisciplined and making a lot of bad penalties and being out of position and stuff like that. So fascinating career for the Jets. He wound up missing a lot of games, but I don't think anybody looks back on his time with the Jets as negative.
All right, let's move on to the signings. I was trying to dig up that picture of Aaron Rodgers so I could just throw it up on the screen. I have it. I'm just struggling to share it. That's why I was away a little bit. All right. 3 signings since we last podcasted. First, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with who? I think you thought Myers was the most interesting. You want to start there?
We can do the 2 linemen, honestly. We can lump them together, I would say.
Okay, so Josh Myers, 26-year-old center, was Justin Fields' center at Ohio State, obviously. Yep. I also started 50 games over the last 3 seasons with the Packers. And then Chukwuma Okorafor.
Okorafor, yeah.
That. Yeah, sorry, Okorafor. I missed a syllable. Disastrous 2024. Started week 1 for the Patriots, didn't make it through the whole game, was gone after week 2, never to be seen again, 27-year-old. So it's another situation, Zach, and we keep going over this week, where they're signing guys that really had bad years last year and hoping that that's kind of the outlier and that they can fix these guys.
Yeah, I think it's a sign that both Muji and Glenn believe in this coaching staff's ability to get the most out of guys that have shown some ability in the past and are still young and still have a ceiling to improve. And so you've seen that with pretty much every guy. I mean, you can even lump Justin Fields in there. He didn't play well enough to keep the starting job, so you could argue he didn't have a great year last year. I think he looked solid in those games, but he ultimately was benched, and the Jets gave him $20 million. So it's or $40 million, I should say, for 2 years. But yeah, Okorafor, look, he's a guy that obviously I think we all want some answers maybe of what happened in New England, why he left the team and all that stuff. It's not a great look, but maybe there was something going on that nobody knows about. I'd say with him, he was a starter for the Steelers for like 4 years at right tackle. So he's experienced, he's young. He has a very baseline ability to play tackle in the NFL. I think ideally he's your swing tackle. I would say if you go into the season, he's your starting right tackle. That's probably not ideal, but he can be your swing tackle at right or left tackle, and he's maybe technically an upgrade over like Carter Warren and Max Mitchell as someone who has more experience and has played on good teams. But yeah, I expected them to maybe aim higher at tackle. They let Morgan Moses walk. There's still some guys out there. I know a lot of fans are calling for Jedrick Wills. He's another guy who said last year he said he made a business decision to not play 1 week, which again is not a great look, but young guy has shown some talent. he'd be the only one that's out there that I'm like, okay, that guy you can plug in as a starter and feel pretty good about it, maybe. But I could see them drafting somebody and you have a competition, or we'll get into Josh Myers next. But yeah, I don't blame them for the signing. I don't think you could say it's a negative signing unless he's your starting right tackle in week 1, and then I don't feel great about it. But they're banking on a guy who has experience as a starter and is still young, becoming better with this coaching staff.
And then Myers is the guy that, I mean, when you talk about playing experience, like 50 starts in the NFL is no joke.
Yeah, 50 starts over the last 3 years. He was the Packers starting center. He was up and down. I asked our Packers writer Matt Schneidman about him. He said he's like fine. He's like solid, good locker room guy. I think that he has historically been a pretty good pass blocker. He had a bad year last year. I think PFF had him like 30th of 32 guys overall. He gave up the second most pressures out of all centers, like 29. But 2 years ago, he was in like the top 10 of all interior linemen in pass block win rate. And I think they paid him in a way that would make you think he's a backup, $3.5 million for 1 year. But he's been a starter historically. So until they make a move to like get a right tackle, like you have to at least consider the possibility they're looking at like a reshuffle of the offensive line, which would you plug him in at center, you put Joe Tippmann at right guard, which he played a little bit as a rookie. You put AVT at right tackle, which he's played a little bit over the last couple of years. It's not ideal in my opinion because I think AVT's best at right guard. But if you're trying to get the best 5 out there, that as of right this second, I think that's your best 5. But I don't think they're done adding to the offensive line. So I'm not ready to say that's what it's going to look like or anything like that. But I think ultimately, like remove like, okay, we don't know who the starter right tackle is. I think this is their best offensive line group they've had in a minute. You have 4 out of 5 starters. We talked about it a lot. Olu Fashanu, John Simpson, Joe Tippmann, AVT. Those are 4 out of 5 solid guys. Maybe none of them are stars. Maybe Fashanu could become one, but 4 solid offensive linemen. Josh Myers, good depth. Chuks Okorafor, good depth. And I think Carter Warren and Max Mitchell can be good depth too. So you add another piece or two on the offensive line, and I feel pretty good about that group. Like I think it's going to be a good line around Fields. I'm a little more concerned about the tight end position. They need some upgrades there, both in terms of pass catchers and blockers. But I feel pretty good about where their offensive line is at right now. All these guys are under 30 years old too, which is good because they can all grow together.
All right, then the third signing from yesterday was Rashad Weaver. Again, 27. That's like the magic number for this team and these guys. Last sack, though, 2022. He actually had a good year in 2022, but that was a few years back.
Yeah, I think he was a 4th-round pick of the Titans. He had a pretty good year in 22, 5.5 sacks, like 15 or 16 QB hits or something like that. But the year after that didn't do very much, and then he kind of was on some practice squads, I believe, last year. But again, he's probably a minimum contract. I don't get everybody's up in arms because they hadn't signed anybody else at that point, really. But at most, he's a depth piece, and at worst, he doesn't make the team. Like I unless they paid him more than the minimum or it's guaranteed or whatever, which we haven't seen the details of the contract yet. Like you're banking on a guy that was productive in recent years, and they feel like they can get the most out of him. Again, like that's what they're doing with these guys. They're buying low on guys they feel like have potential. I don't think they're done at defensive end either. I don't know whether that be draft or free agency, but I don't think they're done there. Somebody just asked in the chat about their cap space.
Yeah, I was going to throw that up there.
Yeah. After Fields, they had like 33 million. We don't know the structure yet of the Cisco, Brandon Stevens, Rashad Weaver, Josh Myers, Chuks Okorafor, Isaiah Oliver re-signed. We don't know his contract yet. Add all those up, I would guess they're probably going to be around low 20s, high teens in terms of cap space right now. You can clear out some more. They haven't cut Alan Lazard yet. They haven't cut Greg Zuerlein yet. And there's some contracts you can restructure. So there's more ways to build space. But I would say they're probably in the high teens, low 20s right now.
With a lot to do, which is something we can, and this is the same list, right, that we've kind of gone over because they haven't filled it all out, but still need receiver, tight end, defensive tackle, right tackle, safety. There's a lot still to do.
Yeah, and that's like the reticence to celebrate what the Jets have done, I think, from the fan base. They haven't signed any of the receivers. Tim Patrick's still out there. Some older guys are also still out there, like a Diggs, a Keenan Allen, a Tyler Lockett, a Cooper Kupp. I don't see them going those guys that way necessarily. I wouldn't hate like an Amari Cooper if it was the right price personally, but I don't know what they're doing at receiver. Like we're at a point now where we're a couple days into free agency, and I still, if I was projecting a mock draft, it could still be like any of the positions I would have considered before. Like that's kind of where it's like they could still go receiver, tackle, defensive tackle, edge rusher, tight end. Like those are all still possibilities. So, but I would say that's not the worst thing because I think this draft is pretty good at most of those spots. So it's not the worst idea to go into the draft and plan to fill out a lot of your roster with rookies, but that also is an indication that they're not actually trying to win now, which they've been preaching publicly and privately. So,
Yeah. Completely lost my train of thought there.
no,
You did mention Isaiah.
Somebody just asked if they're going to bring back Elijah Moore. I've been getting this question a lot. I don't see it. It is a different coaching staff, different GM group, and a lot of the rosters different. That would be kind of crazy. I mean, to Renzel's point in the chat, he does fit the mold of what they've been going after, which are young guys coming off not amazing years who have talent, and he does have all of that. But I personally wouldn't bring him back. Yeah, they know too much. I don't know. I mean, I guess it wouldn't be if you're just like remove the history of him and the Jets, like I could see it, but I don't envision that happening unless Aaron Glenn really, really likes Elijah Moore.
What I was going to say was, you rattled off all those receivers that you don't think they'd be interested in, like big name receive. You know what I mean? Like in different parts of their careers, later in their careers, not what they used to be. But as far as name recognition, there are a lot of receivers still out there 3 days into free agency.
Yeah, and that's why I just like everybody, saying the Jets have done terrible. Like there's still a lot of guys out there that if the Jets sign them, I think fans would be happy with. So I wouldn't jump to conclusions yet. Like they're still working. They still could re-sign Tyler Conklin. Like there's still stuff to be done.
All right. Anything else before we say goodbye?
No, I mean, Isaiah Oliver re-signed like we expected. They re-signed Jamin Davis, the linebacker, who people maybe forgot was signed to the team late last season. He's a former first-round pick of the Commanders. Just a training camp body, ultimately, or somebody to compete for a roster spot. But again, we'll come back if they make any other big signings. It might quiet down now, but if they sign one of those receivers, then we'll definitely do a pod for that for sure. I'm sure we'll come back with you guys with at least another pod in the near future, I would say.
Yeah, not next week though. By the way, I don't know if I told you this, Zack. I'm going to London next week.
Oh, well, I have my bachelor party next weekend. So
next weekend, okay. But next week, for visiting the Athletic London Bureau.
Oh, cool. We got some great stuff going on out there. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's gonna be fun. I leave Sunday night, fly overnight, and then come back Friday. So it'll be tough podcasting during the week next week, but we'll be back soon enough, and we may have another one this week. It is just Thursday. We maybe not going out tomorrow. We'll see what they do. All right. Thank you everybody for joining us here on the Flight Plan Podcast. It's been fun doing this repetitively through the week. These short
I know,
ones.
it's been fun.
We'll probably do this draft week too. We'll do a lot of pods during the draft, leading up to the draft. Yep. We'll talk to everybody soon. Thanks.